Hello, friends. Welcome to an Encore episode from Real Faith, Real World. We encourage you to visit our website to learn more about today's topic and the many offerings from World Methodist Evangelism, including Metanoia Europe, coming up August 29th in Durham, England. The website is worldmethodist.org, and there you'll find ways to connect with us as well. Thank you for listening and enjoy this episode. Welcome to World Methodist Evangelism's Real Faith, Real World podcast, where we connect the faith within us with the world around us. Our mission at World Methodist Evangelism is to provide resources and events to strengthen discipleship and equip Christ followers to share their faith in Jesus Christ. I'm Rob Haynes of World Methodist Evangelism, and I'm here with my colleague.
I'm Kim Reisman, also from World Methodist Evangelism.
And this is our initial podcast for the Real Faith, Real World podcast. So it's an exciting launch, Kim.
It is an exciting launch. I'm excited because I just want to let people know a little bit more about World Evangelism and what we do. So I'm excited to be here.
It may be a wonderful thing or a travesty, but we are the best kept secret in Methodism. And so let's do something about that. What are you saying?
That is exactly right. We are the best kept secret in Methodism, for sure.
Well, here on the initial podcast, we want to start off by saying thanks to Christ Church Global in Memphis, Tennessee, for their support in making this podcast possible. And we're just really thankful for their partnership in this. We do, at this very first podcast, just want to introduce you, the listener, to World Methodist Evangelism a little bit more. And I can't think of anyone better to do that than Kim, not only as executive director, but someone who has been familiar with the work with World Evangelism long before you came on about 5 years or so ago.
Yes,
so,
right.
So why don't you just start and kind of tell us about World Evangelism and how it got started and what is it?
Absolutely. Well, it is interesting because that you said that World Evangelism is the best kept secret. It is. But it's also had an amazing impact, and I really feel lucky because World Evangelism impacted my ministry from a really early age. Some of the stuff that World Evangelism does, which we'll get into that later, but some of these ministries impacted me when I was 20 years old. I was impacted by a young adult gathering that World Evangelism did that we still do. And again, we'll talk about that. But then again, when at the very beginning of my ministry, right after I was ordained in the United Methodist Church, I went to another gathering that World Evangelism sponsored. And again, I was impacted deeply, and it changed kind of the direction of my ministry. So at really crucial points, World Evangelism has had a big impact on my life. And so for me, it's been a really big joy to be able to begin leading this organization. I've been with the organization about 5.5 years. But World Evangelism began as a ministry of the World Methodist Council. And that was almost 50 years ago, so we've been in existence for a long time. But we are an autonomous nonprofit organization that works within the Wesleyan Methodist family to provide resources and tools to help people to share their love of Jesus Christ. And we do that in a variety of ways. Again, we'll talk about that. But the primary thing about World Evangelism is that we work in the context of this big and wonderful Methodist Wesleyan family. We are over 80 million strong in this family. And there are over 80 different denominations in 134 different countries. So the Methodist Wesleyan family is global and far-reaching, and World Evangelism works in that context. Again, under kind of the umbrella of the World Methodist Council, to be able to resource folks in evangelism.
So it sounds like it must be this really huge, massive building with all of these people in it who work so hard at it. But that's really not the case at all.
No,
and one of the
it's
things
not.
that I think is so wonderful about the way we do ministry is that we do that in partnership and in celebration of local ministries. This is not a top-down sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's the recognition that God is working around the world in people's lives, and we have the opportunity to bring that out, to teach, to train, and to further resource people who need that. That we're able to provide those things that they don't have in those local areas.
Yeah, that's really true. Because we aren't this big, massive thing. There's only 5 of us that do all this work, but we have a really amazing team. But we also depend really heavily on volunteers to help us do our work, and we have a whole network of volunteers, what we call regional secretaries, and those are just really dedicated leaders in the different areas of the world, in the different denominations, that gather teams around them, teams of volunteers around them, to be able to identify the needs in their area, or the challenges, or the ways in which world evangelism can come alongside to support their work. And so we depend on them to let us know what's going on, and then we depend on them for invitations, because we never do anything without being invited to do it. But through those volunteers and through that network across the whole globe, we're able to identify places that we need to be and ways in which we need to help. And then that's what we do.
And it's really amazing that we can connect with those regional secretaries, 19 of them around the world on nearly every continent. We're not to Antarctica.
Not yet.
Yet.
Not
yes. Yet. However, God is at work in these different ways, and it's amazing the way God raises up leaders in these areas who represent the work in their local context to World Methodist Evangelism and some of the resources that we can provide, and let people in those contexts know just what we can do. So, again, because you've got such a rich history with world evangelism, kind of catch us up a little bit on some of the ways that we have used the regional secretaries in the past, and some of the ways that the ministry has worked through them.
Well, really, the regional secretaries are key, and so we, as I said, they kind of identify the challenge or the need that's in their area, and then we work together to address it. So, for instance, we're going to be doing a training in Indonesia, and our regional secretaries in that area of the world have identified some aspects of evangelism training that they really need us to focus on. They need to be given tools and resources to be able to deal with being Christian in a very strongly Muslim environment. So they need teaching on how to engage the Muslim world. They also are in a really pluralistic kind of environment with a lot of different kinds of things happening, a lot of different peoples, and so they need tools about that as well. And so what world evangelism will do is bring together people who can provide teaching, and sometimes the people are us, the staff of World Evangelism, but many times it's identifying regional people who have expertise in a particular kind of context and can give on the ground practical contextual guidance to the laity and the clergy in that area. But in that way, we kind of gather together laity and clergy for usually about a week of training and teaching and sharing, so that the witness for Christ can be strengthened in that area.
And that happens not only in Indonesia, but around the world as
Absolutely.
It has over the years. And several times a year.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right.
So
I was going to say, I mentioned Indonesia simply because that's one that we're in the process of planning. But that happens all the time. We've got planning working for for an event to happen in Romania. We've done events in Mexico. We've done them in Portugal, in Peru, in Brazil. We've done them all over the world. And we continue. We're in the process of planning one for Fiji. So there's always something being planned, some way to resource some part of the world. Always, we're always in the middle of planning something or implementing something, and the key is that each region does have some unique needs. There are similar needs across the world. I mean, a lot of our world is becoming more secular. With people moving from place to place, the world is becoming more pluralistic. So there are a lot of commonalities, but then there are also unique things about each region, and we want to be able to address those as well, so that everything is firmly rooted in the context in which we're teaching. So that's kind of how we work it.
And I love that it is led by pastors who are from that area, and it's not just someone from North America sweeping in for a week or so and running out. All of these places that we work, whether it be in the United States or across the world, are with people with whom we have long-standing relationships.
Right.
These are not only hosts or teachers for us, but these are our ministry colleagues. These are our friends.
Right. Exactly.
And these are people that are going to be there long after we're gone to continue the work.
Exactly.
And so it's not just a one-off, let me show you how to do this, but let me show you, let's come in and see what is right in your area, what God is doing, and let's discover ways that maybe we have some resources and gifts that we can bring alongside that work. And
that's a good point, because it isn't just us swooping in by any stretch. And there's also follow-up on these things as well. So we might, for instance, we did over the last several years, we've done things in Argentina and Peru, and part of that grew out of, we did something in Argentina, and there were Peruvians who were present, and then they felt that they needed us to come there, so then it kind of snowballs. And so that's an exciting thing. But the other thing about it that I find really meaningful is that it's never just us going. We always try to take others with us. So for instance, we might take a group of seminarians from North America so that they can have a cross-cultural experience of evangelism as part of their seminary work. We frequently take lay people and clergy from the United States so that they can experience what God is doing in another part of the world. And so that they then can be connected to that and relationships can build. And then apart from World Methodist Evangelism, those relationships can grow and become stronger, so that there's a reciprocal give and take back and forth between the folks in one part of the world and folks in another part of the world. And so that's one of the things we think is really important about what we do, is providing this connection point for the whole family, so that relationships across all kinds of different boundaries and whether it's geographic or ethnic or denominational, whatever, so that those things can be crossed and people can become closer together in their witness for Christ. So that's an exciting thing that I really find valuable.
Yeah, and I think we should talk more about some of those events that we do, not only in international context, but also in the United States. But first, it would be great, I think, if we talked a little bit about just what we're teaching in that. And one of those resources being Embrace, Sharing and Showing the Love of Jesus, a work that you have recently published. So, yeah, I think it would be really helpful if you had a chance to talk about that resource and what that looks like, both as a resource and an event.
Yeah, I think I'm excited about that, primarily because it seems to be really getting a lot of traction across cultures. It doesn't really matter what the culture is. There's something about this idea of embrace that resonates with people, and that's a really meaningful thing. But the common denominator about what World Methodist Evangelism teaches is that we believe that evangelism is holistic. And it's not simply about holding a revival or doing the 4 spiritual laws and having someone read the sinner's prayer or whatever. It's really a holistic thing. So no matter what we're teaching and no matter what kind of event we're organizing, there's going to be a holistic element to it. And that's really, really important. And Embrace kind of embodies that to a large degree. We use the metaphor of an embrace in order to illustrate in our, create a vision of really what evangelism, this process of evangelism actually is. Because it is about showing and sharing the love of Jesus. So again, it's not just a cut and dried kind of thing. It's a process of walking with people for a long time as they come to know Jesus and accept Him as their Savior and Lord. And the process of embrace. If you think about an embrace, there's 4 steps. So you have to open your arms, you have to wait, you have to close your arms, and then you have to open them again. And if you don't have all 4, kind of that, all those things aren't connected, then you're not actually going to have an embrace. And so that kind of points to this whole process. And then the resource uses that metaphor to focus on what I believe are 6 essential values that ground all evangelism. No matter what part of the world you live in, you're going to stand on the same foundation as everybody else while you're showing and sharing the love of Jesus. And those values are humility and clarity and prayer, worship, integrity, and urgency. And all 6 of those are significant in this whole process of evangelism. They form the foundation, kind of our way of being in the world as we reach out to others. So the whole metaphor and the whole concept of values has really resonated with a lot of people. And so it's really exciting to see them grasp that. It's really good.
And it is a great resource and teaching tool. So talk a little bit about if there was a pastor who wanted to use this in a local congregation, what are some of the options for that?
Right. Yeah. There's right now we have 2 main options, although we're also developing some online tools. But currently we have 2 main options. The first one is a small group resource. So if you wanted your congregation to study Embrace, you could provide the study book for your different small groups. So your small groups or your life groups or your cell groups, whatever you happen to call them, could take this resource. It's laid out in 6 sessions. There's small bits of reading with reflective questions, and then at the end of each session, there's guidelines for the facilitator. So it's all contained in there, and your small groups can do that over the course of 6 weeks. We also have a kind of a parallel resource. If the pastor actually wanted to preach on these values while the small groups were going through the study, we have an online resource that can provide kind of sermon prompts and that kind of thing as well. But the other way that we teach Embrace is by taking the study book material that's spread over 6 weeks and putting it into a workshop context. So you could gather your congregation on a Friday evening and an all-day Saturday and do all of the material kind of condensed into a workshop format where you had discussion time and small table groups to discuss the material and that kind of thing over the course of a weekend. So that's the second alternative that we have for the resource.
One of the things I love about this whole teaching is that it is the teaching of a lifestyle and a posture. It's not hey, walk up to a stranger, ask them this question. If they say yes, then, go to this part. And if they say no, then do this. but rather it's giving someone the tools that I think a lot of Christians want, and that is to, how do I talk about Jesus with the people in my office or the people in my neighborhood or even the people in my own family, to do that in a very authentic way with those 6 values that you laid out, I think are just absolutely brilliant. And the whole metaphor of an embrace with those arms standing open and waiting for the other person to be ready to receive an embrace, that's what's inappropriate. And I just love that metaphor in terms of evangelism.
Yeah, it seems to resonate. People really do seem to be able to identify with it in a real way, and that's really encouraging. It's very encouraging.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to see what God does with that. And speaking of pastors, in the spring, there is a gathering of clergy and spouses that World Evangelism does every year called Order of the Flame. Now, about 25 years or so on, we've gathered clergy across the Wesleyan Methodist family, as we do now, in several different denominations at St. Simon's Island there at Epworth by the Sea in southeast Georgia. And what a beautiful gathering of people who want to serve the Lord and just learn how to do that in a way that they can live out their call to be faithful leaders as mission evangelists, FLAME, Order of the Flame.
That's right.
And it's a beautiful thing to see people from the AME and the AME Zion Church, from the Wesleyan, from the CME, from the Nazarenes, from the United Methodists, the Free Methodists, so many others come together to worship, to study, to pray, to fellowship together. And all of these young clergy, ideally 40 and under, or in their first 10 years of ministry, who have been recognized by a leader in their denomination, a bishop or a district superintendent, as someone who is really seeking to faithfully live this out in their context, come together to be better equipped, and not only better equipped with the great teaching and with the great worship that is there, but also to come together in fellowship to realize that they're not alone.
That's one of my highlights of the year, every year in March when we're down at St. Simon's. And I think that one of the things I love about it is, well, first of all, this is one of those events that I attended early on. I had only been ordained probably a year when I went down there, and it was just a transformative experience. So it's always a joy to be able to gather these young clergy. But what we're trying to do with the Order of the Flame is create a community. And so each year a new group comes that has been nominated, as you said, by the leadership in their denomination, or even by another person who has already gone through the flame. So each year there's going to be a new group that comes through. But we also invite, if you've already been to the flame, we invite you to return, because one of the key elements of the flame is a commitment to mentoring and to nurturing those that come behind us. So our assumption is that the more experienced people in the life of faith and ministry are going to reach out a hand to those that are younger than they are, or younger in ministry than they are, to guide them along. And so that's the kind of community that we're really hoping to create through Order of the Flame. And then the other element that I think is just really valuable is the fact that we include spouses in this whole process. Clergy are invited, whether they're single or married, are invited to the flame. But if they are married, we really, really encourage them to bring their spouses, because if you're in ministry, it's never a solo experience. I mean, your whole family is roped into this process. It's not just about you, and so we really believe that spouses are crucial. And so we invite them to participate as fully as the clergy members that attend participate. So that's another valuable thing that I really appreciate. And then the last thing that really, really makes me excited is the fact that this really is an eclectic and diverse gathering of people. We cross the denominational lines, the boundaries of our different churches, but we also cross ethnic boundaries and geographic boundaries, and the spirit that is present at that gathering is always just tremendous. The Holy Spirit always blesses us and is always poured out upon us in a really rich and wonderful way. And it just makes it a very meaningful time of learning, not just from the teachers and that kind of thing, but from the fellow participants as you're around your table groups and as you're sharing your meals together. There's just a lot of relationship building and a lot of sharing, and a lot of really wonderful stuff that happens that really doesn't ever happen any other place. And so I'm just grateful that we're able to provide that for folks.
Yes, and it's not only a time where you sit and listen to long plenaries or anything like that, but it's worship, it's breakout sessions in areas of word and deed and sign, equipping and resourcing for preaching and Bible study, for mission in local context, whether that be racial reconciliation or maybe transforming a dying church that is really not representative of the community in which it finds itself.
Right,
or
yep.
learning how to embrace the signs of the Holy Spirit in your ministry. All of these things go on time and time again, and not only do you find great teaching, but just encouragement. Every year, we hear of pastors who drive down there thinking that this is going to be the last thing that they do before they quit.
Right,
because
exactly.
they're spent, they're tired, no one seems to be listening, and they come away with just a recharge and a refresh for ministry. And it's just so exciting to see that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that, feeling burnt out and tired. One of the things that happened just at our most recent flame, which was just really meaningful to me, is that there was this young pastor that really was ready to throw in the towel. He was ready to be done. But there was also a pastor at his table who was one of the returning flame members. So they had this second man had been to the flame, maybe 2 years prior, but decided to come back. And when he was thinking about why he should come back, he just had this sense that he had an experience in his ministry earlier of being burnt out and really feeling like he was ready to quit. And he just got this sense that somebody might need to hear that and be encouraged by his own experience. And, as the Spirit would have it, both of those individuals were placed at the same table. In fact, they sat right next to each other. And as they shared during that week around their table, the one that was ready to throw in the towel and the one who returned, having had that same experience, was able to share how he dealt and all of those kinds of things, and just be a source of encouragement to that young pastor. And that happens all the time at Flame, and it's just a really, really remarkable thing.
And if you take that, take those two people without that incident, I don't think they ever would have met. They probably would have never crossed paths.
There's no way. There's no way they would have met.
I can't imagine that. So I should say earlier that there will be links to all of this in the show notes. And if you are interested in something like Order the Flame, ask your leader, ask a seminary professor in evangelism, or your district superintendent, your pastor, who has been, so maybe you have a pastor who's been before, or maybe your bishop, and they nominate you, and then, your invitation comes from that. If you're someone who's been to Order the Flame in the past, as Kim mentioned, you are invited back. And again, you can visit our website, and there is a forum there where you can stay connected to learn more about not only the one-week event that we have, but we are here in the spring of 2020 launching some new initiatives for people that have been to Flame. One is something we're calling Fanning the Flame. And beginning in April of 2020, we will host conversations. One of the things that the spring of 2020 has taught us is that Zoom conversations can be had in all sorts of contexts for all sorts of reasons. And we already had in mind to do that before the worldwide COVID-19 shutdown, really, if you will, happened. But the focus of these conversations is to engage with relevant ministry topics virtually, a roundtable conversation, if you will. And this is not a data download. It's not a lecture where someone's going to tell you what you should do, but it's a chance for you to ask questions as a Flame alum, a returning member or new member. It's a chance for you to discuss some ideas that you have, or maybe it's a chance for you you have no idea how to even begin a ministry topic, and how do you do that? It could be church planting. It could be racial reconciliation in your community. It could be something very topical like the coronavirus response, and how do you connect with other people in that. And so that's one way. And the other way is Flame 2.0, which is a mentoring opportunity that will include teaching both in the United States and internationally, and a monthly mentoring community, one-on-one and with people at WME. So if you have been previously to order the Flame, I would encourage you to go on our website and get on that mailing list so that you can get to know more about these. That's worldmethodist.org. Not only do we have Order the Flame, Kim, annually, but we have something that doesn't happen every year as part of our event offering that we do, and that's called Metanoia. But it wasn't always called that. And again, I would love for our listeners to hear from you about that, because you have a great testimony about the history of this event for young adults and what it's meant in your own life, too. So tell us a little about Metanoia and ICYCE.
That's right, ICYCE. That was the original name for this gathering of young adults that started in 1980, and that was the first time we gathered for ICYCE, which stands for International Christian Youth Conference on Evangelism. And we have chosen to change the name to Metanoia. It's a little bit easier.
Because metanoia means transformation.
That's right. Metanoia means transformation. In every language, it means transformation. So, and that's really what we're after with this event. It's a gathering of young adults aged 18 to 35, and they come to one location from all over the world. And as I said, the very first one was in 1980, and it was in England. And I was at that first gathering, and it really was transformative for my life. It put me on an entirely different direction. That if I had not really gone to that conference, I probably would not be doing what I'm doing today. So it was really transformative for me. But it's exciting because we have three main goals for folks that come. We want them to be able to grow deeper in their own faith. Obviously, that's a really important part of what the Metanoia experience is all about. Is getting in touch with your own experience of faith. And then the other part, the second part, would be connecting with folks from all over the world, to recognizing that as a follower of Jesus, you are connected to people all over the world that are following Jesus just as you are. And as someone in the Methodist Wesleyan tradition, you've got a really big family as well. That are again all trying to be faithful followers of Jesus, and it's really a wonderful thing to recognize that you're not alone in your faith, and to be able to connect with so many different people from so many different parts of the world, with so many different life experiences. It really is transformative in that way. And then the final thing we want folks to do is to recognize that really God has a purpose for everybody's life. And part of that purpose is connecting almost exactly what we're trying to do in this podcast, connecting the faith within us with the world around us. And so that means that if your purpose in life is to be a doctor, then you're going to do that as a faithful Christian doctor. If your purpose is to teach, then you're going to do it as a faithful Christian teacher. If your purpose is to be a custodian or a nanny or a cook, any vocation that you have, you live that vocation out as a faithful Christian person in that vocation. And those connections are really crucial. And so we want people, young adults, to be able to recognize that and recognize that that God works through them in all elements of their life and their purpose. So those are the three kind of main things we do. And this coming, next year, 2021, in August, we're going to be in Sweden at this really cool retreat center on the sea, and I'm really looking forward. We're looking forward to being with everybody in Sweden. I can't pronounce it, but it's A-H Sweden. Sweden. So.
And it's August the 10th.
That's
and
right,
you
August
can visit metanoia2021.org. And there you can find links to how to get more information about it. When registration opens, you'll be informed. You could also sponsor a young adult. I think this is so important because 125, maybe 150 young adults who are going to be equipped with biblical frameworks to engage some of the most important questions of their time. The world in which they will be the leaders will face things that generations previously have either failed to do or never even seen in this way. So we can talk about issues here or even in our own countries about climate change or migration or human trafficking or these sorts of things. But when you put people from 4 or 5 different continents around the same table and discuss these issues, then your whole perspective changes. And again, this is not just a one-off sort of thing. Though the one-time gathering is important, it's the ongoing communications and the ongoing networking that they do, which is so rich and so valuable, and that's an important part of our ministry. And so I am really looking forward to Metanoia, and here in this initial podcast, we don't have a whole lot of time to go too deep into it, but it is something that we will go into in further episodes as well, because it is so very important to give the next leaders of the church the tools that they need to lead so very well. We've talked about some of the different resources and events that we have. We talked about things like Metanoia. We've talked about things like Order of the Flame. But I'm really excited that we're launching this podcast. And it's not just to jump on the podcast bandwagon, though that seems to be something that's going on a lot. This is a way that we can offer a platform that reaches the global church efficiently, that people on the other end of this podcast can receive it at little or no cost to them. All they have to do is just their device, and they can listen to this on their phone or on their computers or whatever. And in the age in which we live, it's so easy to access this information. And so I'm excited that we're able to offer this to our global witness and hear more from people who are working around the world. And so I want to make a plug for one thing that you'll hear from us from time to time, and that's what we're going to call a ministry moment. And this is a chance for you, no matter what part of the world you live in, to tell us what God is doing in that part of the world, and tell us what God is doing through your ministry and in evangelism, maybe some of the ways that World Evangelism has ministered to you and some of the things that you have seen. And what you'll do is part on our website, you go to worldmethodist.org and go to the podcast link there. And there's a form where you can upload a 2 to 3 minute testimony. That you can do that through your phone or through your computer. If you upload that audio file, we will select one of those from time to time and share those with everyone to hear about what you're doing. So we really want to encourage you to keep talking back to us and let us know what God's doing there.
And I'm excited about the whole podcast concept as well. I think those ministry moments are going to be, really meaningful for everybody. But I think it's important for us to have discussions about this and make those discussions available to people, because evangelism is a lot bigger than everyone usually thinks about. And it's not the most popular thing to talk about. I mean, the whole word evangelism is kind of a dirty word in a lot of circles. But evangelism is really just showing and sharing the love of Jesus. And it connects to all kinds of different parts of our lives. And it's not just about telling somebody the 4 spiritual laws and then having them say the sinner's prayer. It's way bigger than that. And because it touches so much of our lives and we don't even realize it, I believe it's worth talking about, because how we show and share the love of Jesus is crucial in our age, and what kind of witness we give to those that are beyond the boundaries of our churches is really, really significant. And we can live in a way that reflects Jesus or not. And in our current age, all around the world, there are all kinds of polarizations. There's all kinds of tension and conflict. And the world needs a good word. The world needs to know that the good news is actually good, and the world needs to know that the good news is actually news. And I'm hoping that this podcast will be one of the ways that we're able to get that information out, help people to know that, give people resources and tools simply by our conversation that will help them to become more confident in sharing their faith in Jesus Christ.
And I think that's a great way to finish up this introductory podcast episode. Well, I want to thank you again for listening to World Methodist Evangelism's Real Faith, Real World podcast, where we connect the faith within us with the world around us. Again, we want to thank Christ Church Global in Memphis, Tennessee, for their generosity in making this podcast possible. Be sure to rate and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.